Thank you so much, Mark, for this very friendly welcome. Also, a welcome from my side. It's a pleasure for me, it's an honor for me to be part of this very exciting conference. And I've learned you got already a lot of information about sustainability and tourism, responsible tourism, profiles from different concepts, different countries, and so on. So it seems to be that I'm a little bit exotic in this round, but maybe this could be also a little bit helpful for bring some new aspects in this program, and I will give you, as mentioned, a brief overview about our corporate concept, about CSR at Volkswagen Group. I think it would be very helpful if you have any question, please don't hesitate to interrupt me immediately. I will start a dialogue. I will discuss with you. It's, in my opinion, much more valuable than I bring my presentation at the end. Unfortunately, I have to leave at 2 o'clock, so this will be the limit of the time, but all the other things we can have a very open and interesting discussion. I will start with my presentation and will try to bring you a brief overview about these concepts, CSR definitions and concepts, global challenges on sustainability, global activities and global responsibility. So I will turn over to the perspective of our Volkswagen Group and will give you a brief overview about our values, our management system, but also, I think very important, what is the daily practice in the whole group. Not to bother you with detailed definitions, but I think it's very interesting, especially when we are discussing all these things from very different perspectives, from different country perspectives, from different thematic perspectives, and all these things, we have to try to find a kind of common understanding what CSR means. And maybe some of you who are a little bit deeper involved in the discussion know there are, let's say, 2 different pathways to come to the actual CSR discussion. On the one hand, let's say the Anglo-Saxony pathway, the tradition of the CSR concepts in these countries, in these companies and so on, and the other way is, let's say, the European perspective. I think at the end of the day, we find a lot of common ideas in this field, but I think when you try to understand it, you have to see this also different sources, so to speak. And here is, let's say, the understanding formulated in a paper from the European Commission. And the most important thing of this definition is just only the one that we do all these things beyond compliance, so to speak. So they are parts of our strategic core activities on the one hand, but they are voluntary based. It's more than legal requirement. I think this is the main idea of CSR in this field. And there you have a very, very short, typical American definition of CSR. Corporate social responsibility is a commitment to improve community well-being through discretionary business practices and contributions of corporate resources. We all know, but I will this make very, very brief, that there are also some, let's say, typical academic controversies in this field. And some of you may know there is a fascinating, very short, very brief definition from Milton Friedman, the business of business is business. And on the other hand, you see there, I want not to go into the detail, a definition from, for example, actually Michael Porter and Mark Rama, where they are discussing that there is a false dichotomy when you make a differentiation between economic and social objectives. I think this is really the great progress in the CSR discussion to combine these approaches and to see there is a complementary development
because you can, as a company, and I will show it from the perspective of a company like Volkswagen, you can't, so to speak, in an isolated way try to bring it to a successful business pathway. It's necessary to be in an intensify interaction with your neighborhood, with other stakeholders, and this is, so to speak, the ground for a good business development. And therefore, in my opinion, let's say, in a way, Milton Friedman is jumping too short. So it's necessary to see this in a broader environment. To sum it up for a starting point, in my point of view, CSR can be seen as a new form of business governance. And this means CSR is more than legal compliance, and therefore CSR is necessarily, as I pointed out already, voluntary in basic parts and not a matter of regulatory effect. And it is therefore, and this is also very important, competitive driven. In my opinion, it's really an advantage of competition when the CSR performance of a company is doing well. CSR requires and promotes transparency and accountability, and thereby leads to new internal corporate control systems and also information systems. And I think this is very important, is dialogue-oriented internally with our internal stakeholders and also externally with a systematic integration of stakeholder dialogues. CSR integrates, and this is the tradition I pointed already out, CSR integrates the earlier philanthropic approach while going beyond it with a value-based and strategy-based component. And it's tied up with the company's economic core processes. And this is, I think, very important for the issues discussing in this conference here. To say it also very brief, in my opinion, CSR has a global perspective or has no perspective. Because in a globalized world, all our activities must seen from the perspective of these process of globalization. But this means also that our activities, our community involvement as a global company are very, very strong localized. So I will show you later that the understanding of CSR for a company like Volkswagen means in a concrete way that we are active as CSR, for example, in a very different way in countries like Argentina, Brazil, China, South Africa, and so on. So I think this is a kind of a very complementary development. It's very interesting also to act in a way like this, that we are on the one hand acting as a global company with global common values and so on, and the concrete projects are running at a very localized basis because nobody knows better how we can organize this exchange between the stakeholders and so on than our colleagues working in the locations in South Africa, in Argentina and Brazil and so on. I think this balance, this form of dialectic between localization and globalization, this is a real driver, this is a real driving force for CSR, especially for CSR like a company than Volkswagen. I think I will, for the time, only give a very brief definition for our understanding. It's a kind of mission statement for our group concerning sustainable development. Nowadays, the vision of sustainability is completely accepted all over the world. What sustainability development essentially means is that our business practices and the depletion of resources must not compromise the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. This is a well-known Brundtland definition, some of you may know. Therefore, environmental, economic, and social objectives must be reconciled. I can now tell you hours and hours about the global challenges concerning climate change, resource scarcity, and all these things, so I will do so. If you have any question, please don't hesitate. But here you can only see it is from a study from the World Business Council of Development published last year. There you can see what you may know as the ecological footprint, and I think this is a very plausible understanding way how we can act today economically and environmentally, and how we have to change, because here you see the red line. This is, so to speak, the business as usual. And if we make business as usual for the next, let's say, 20, 30 years, then we don't only need one Earth, so to speak, but we need, as we can here see, for the inhabitants of the world, let's say, nearly 2.5 Earths. And all of you may know this is not plausible. Therefore, we have to find out another development of our economy, of our technological abilities, and so on. And there are different pathways where we can reduce these challenges, reduce CO2 footprint, and so on. I think very important for a company like ours is also a global trend which shows this demographic change. You see not only in Germany but in the world as a whole, completely different pictures of different countries, but in the world as a whole, there we have a strong development that the world population by age cohort shows the population becomes older and older. This is especially for people like me, which are not so young as a lot of the people here in the audience, a good perspective that we are all becoming older and older. Very important is for a company which is responsible for, let's say, producing individual mobility, that we are looking for what happens worldwide. And I think also a very strong trend is that the world population is increasingly urban. So nowadays already more than 50% of the world population is living in urban agglomerations, and this development will become stronger and stronger. And therefore, I think 2/3 will live in urban areas in this time, and therefore we need for these areas complete different, let's say, mobility systems, mobility services, and also other mobility products. This is a really challenge for a car producer, and I will show you some of our solution proposals. I think also very important for us is a development built up here. The global middle class is rapidly expanding. We have to discuss seriously very different developments in different countries. We have to discuss that there are, on the one hand, critical issues like let's say, a social drift between richer and poorer parts of the population and all these things. But to see it in a really general way, you can observe that in a lot of relevant regions of the world, there you have a growing middle class, and especially in countries which are really relevant. Let's think about China, let's think about India, let's think about the South American countries like Brazil or Argentina or Mexico or whatever you think about. Then you can see there is a rapidly expanding middle class, and this is very important for a car producer because there is no other really very stable correlation than the stabilization between personal income and the wish for individual mobility, say, for a car. And therefore you can imagine, all in all, we are not an old-fashioned industry. We have really a very interesting perspective for our industry, but we have also facing the challenges when we are producing cars, when we are delivering
individual mobility, we must have in mind that we must radically reduce the emissions, especially the CO2 emissions, and we must be very sensitive with the consumption of different resources. But all in all, this is the idea of this picture. The whole global trend is showing a rapidly expanding middle class, and these are the consumers for individual mobilities. These are the consumers for cars, and these are surely also consumers for tourism, the other important topic of this day. And another very, very important aspect is that we are facing a radical global economic power shifting. And you see here the expected development in 2050, and you can also see here starting China, United States, India, Brazil, Mexico, Russia, Indonesia, Japan, United Kingdom, and we could be lucky, we have the 10th rank already for Germany, also in the year 2050. But to be serious, this is really an acting development. It becomes more and more relevant, and you will see when I will show you the figures from Volkswagen that these have already really consequences for our policy, for our strategy. So I give you some figures about the Volkswagen Group. We have now nearly 400,000 employees around the world. We are producing more than 32,000 vehicles per workday, and we have more than 400 different companies. And here, this is very important. We are really a global acting company. We have now 62 locations all around the world. And we have defined, and this is important for the coming up informations, we have defined a clear strategy to become the global automotive leader by the year 2018. And this means for us, and this is important also for my personal task, as Mark pointed out, I'm responsible for sustainability and CSR in the Volkswagen Group. To become automotive leadership means also to become economic and environmental leadership in the global automotive industry. And therefore, we have to be competent, especially also in alternative powertrains, in alternative mobility concepts, and so on. What means CSR for a company like Volkswagen? And also to find the definition balance between, let's say, sustainability, as pointed out at the beginning of my presentation, and CSR, then in my point of view, you can give really very, very brief definition, and this means CSR is a company's contribution to sustainability development. And we have defined for Volkswagen a very, let's say, simple pyramid. CSR, in our opinion, means at the bottom the daily operational business. We need for the daily operational business what you are calling good management practices, risk management, compliance systems, and so on. And if these normal daily acts, so to speak, doesn't fit with the company's strategy, it doesn't make sense to think about visions and all these things. The basis for all activities are the running day-to-day businesses, the normal management practices, and all these things. If this works successful, then I think companies are able to put this in a specific strategic approach and to find out innovation opportunities and to turn it in competitive advantages. And at the top of the pyramid, I think then if this strategy runs successfully, the company is able, let's say, to give something back to the society, to the environment of the locations and so on. And this is one of the main reasons that companies have an advantage in terms of reputation. And all in all, in my point of view, reputation is one of the highest values for a company, because maybe some of you know there is a very famous sentence from the famous investor Warren Buffett. He told several years ago, it takes time to build up reputation for more than 20 years, but you can damage it in 20 seconds. And therefore it's so important to be very, very careful with your reputation in the company and to avoid reputational risks. And in my point of view, a stable CSR strategy is one of the main contributions in this direction. These are the group values of Volkswagen: customer nearness, top performance, added value, renewability, and very important for my work, so to speak, respect, responsibility, and sustainability. And we have at a very early stage pointed out a Volkswagen model of sustainability, and there we have defined on the basis of a very intensified exchange of exchange and dialogues with stakeholders like Global Compact, like the World Business Council, like OECD and ILO, our model of sustainability. And very important for Volkswagen, we have at a very early beginning of this discussion already 10 years ago formulate a social charter. And this social charter means that for all divisions, for all locations around the world, we have the same social rights in the company. They are based on the so-called ILO Convention. And complementary to the social pillar of sustainability, we have also outlined an environmental policy, and this environmental policy means for Volkswagen that we have also in all our locations worldwide the same ecological standards, the same standards for water recycling, the same standards for energy efficiency, the same standards for ISO certification, and so on. And also very important, the information and training for the employees at these issues. We have, for so to speak, the third pillar of sustainability of ESG. I told something about social, I told something about environmental, and this is the third pillar, the governance. Therefore, we have also a worldwide existing governance system for the Volkswagen Group with a common code of conduct, with the same treatment of information, for example, with the same occupational safety and health policy, with an anti-corruption system which works very well worldwide, with a whistleblowing system, and all these things you can expect from a company like ours. And this is a very bluntly picture. I don't want to go into detail, but I will only give you an impression about the situation that we are not just starting the discussion about CSR 5 years ago or so. It's a tradition for Volkswagen for more than 30 years ago. And this is the idea of this picture. This is the only idea of the picture. There is a complementary development between social innovations on the one hand and ecological innovations on the other hand. So for us, it's very important that we are not only thinking about technological solutions, let's say new engines, new product ideas, hybrid cars, alternative fuels, research cars, and all these things. This is always, as a whole company, accompanied by social innovations, by active corporate involvement in the groups, for example, an engagement in diversity programs, in healthcare programs, or in educational programs. And I think this is very important that you find for this region reputational value, as I mentioned, that these both elements are the key elements for a strong corporate culture. And for me, it's also, let's say, synonymous to speak about corporate culture when you speak about CSR. A strong corporate culture is, for me, the really bottom of all this development I'm trying to show you. I don't want to go in technological details because these are some ideas about fuels, about alternative powertrain technologies and all these things. But I will only show you the idea of this picture. The idea is you can read it in a twofold way. On the one way, you see for a global perspective of a mobility system, there is no existing, let's say, one silver bullet. You have to be involved in all these activities. You have to be involved in the different alternative powertrain technologies, the existing internal combustion engines, the coming hybrid engines, the discussion about electrotraction, and also about fuel cells and so on. Clear is the direction, the pathway. We must define a pathway for the sources of the power, from the fossil power, from oil to renewable sources on the one hand, and we have to go on the pathway step by step from the existing combustion engines up to the e-mobility, the electricity traction. And these are not only ideas, these are not only targets, this becomes more and more for us, let's say, a daily reality. I give you one example. It's a German location. The German location Emden, a very small town. It's at the north coast. There are some advantages you can understand. For example, there we have some wind power and other sources. And up to now, for this plant, we have already 1/3 of the needed power coming from renewable energies. And this shows the direction. This is not a reality for all our locations I mentioned, but this is an example where we will go on. And it becomes more and more important, but it depends on the location of the location. Nevertheless, because at the north coast you can earn much more wind power than we have a location, let's say in Hungary or something like this. But it becomes more and more relevant that we make use of all these things. For a really globalized perspective, I will point it out, as announced, it's very important that we have now not only the center of R&D in our headquarters in Wolfsburg, that we have now becoming more and more an R&D global footprint. And this is also important, you can say, the strategy of localization. I mentioned earlier the balance between localization and globalization. This is, for me, a very impressive idea how you can show that there is a common direction between the targets of the company, our self-interest targets, so to speak, and addressing a social problem. Here, for example, nevertheless, we have an advantage when we have the opportunity to get very high-educated employees, high-educated experts, and so on. On the other hand, we give, with these activities in these countries, at these locations, we give there strong impulses for economic development. And therefore, there is what you can call a win-win situation. We have the opportunity to be active in a country where we get good, well-trained people, and we invest in these people and we invest in this infrastructure, and therefore it's becoming more and more important for us that, for example, we also bring not only assembly lines in these countries, but we bring also there, let's say, high-end activities in this country with high educational people and so on. And one example for this is what we are calling the R&D footprint, and there we can see that now from nearly 23,000 R&D employees, nearly 50%
is not working in our R&D headquarters center, but working all around the world. We are presenting our report about CSR. You can read it at the internet. There are a lot of numbers, a lot of figures, and for us it's very important. Reporting sustainability means really measuring, verifying, and not only tell you nice stories. This is one side of the medal, telling also nice stories, but very important is proving transparency, proving quality, measuring the KPIs, and so on. I will come to the end for my presentation, to have time for some discussions in a way that I will show you some selected examples for our what we're calling stakeholder involvement. I can start with the capital market, and there it's very important that we are involved in a long tradition of, let's say, annual performance tested. And I think it's very important for a company like Volkswagen that this is the idea that we have a response of our activity in forms of rankings and rating results. And we are, let's say, really proud that we are performing in these all ratings at a very good position. We are in the lead group at every time. There are sometimes one or more countries a little bit before the positioning of Volkswagen, but all in all, seeing all these rankings and ratings, you can see that Volkswagen is doing there very well. And you see here, for example, from the SAM group, she's responsible for the most relevant and most important so-called Dow Jones sustainability indexes. Without any doubt, Volkswagen belongs to the top companies in terms of sustainability in the sector. This is here you can see that we are compared to the average of the automotive industry. You see it here really positioned better. Customers, suppliers, employees, as other stakeholders. For us, it's very important. It takes too much time, so I will do very, very brief. Transporting the idea. We are presenting high, sophisticated technological solutions. This is the one side of the medal. But this is not enough. We need to involve the driver, the user of our technological system. So we must make these customers very aware that they can also do a lot of personal activities in saving fuels, in avoiding CO2 emissions, for example. And therefore, we have not only presenting our technological solutions, we have also arising, let's say, a campaign about consumer awareness, so that you find the right combination, not only make use of the technological solution, but use only your own activities, your own abilities in this way, and this is what we are calling under the claim Think Blue. We have also, only without going to the detail, a very good example for a rising project which shows a very strong relationship between Volkswagen and the so-called NABU. This is a German environmental organization, and this is a good example for stakeholder involvement, for stakeholder dialogue, because you see there we have still existing a lot of controversies. Maybe some of you may know we have already a strong, very controversial discussion in Germany about speed limit. And you will see that the position of the car company is that speed limits are not bringing the results which are necessary really to avoid CO2 emissions and so on. And you see on the other hand that NABU is one of the strongest groups, pressure groups, peer groups in challenging speed limits. So it's okay that we have there really a controversy position, but on the other hand we do a lot of things common.
We do, for example, together organizing fuel-saving trainings, because, as I mentioned, with Think Blue, it's very important not only to present the technological solution, but also to be active in these training systems. And we are also involved in projects where we bring together, for example, here in the field of fleet management, projects which are selected by the NABU and which are very important in terms of biodiversity protection, in environmental protection, and so on. So this is for us a really very important step forward, come from a position of a dialogue with the stakeholders to the stakeholder involvement, here even in the production development, like a production we have here already developed with the NABU. Another very important issue is the supply chain management. I don't want to go in detail in this field, but it's for us very important. Responsibility doesn't end, so to speak, at the fence of the company. We must be responsible for the whole supply chain. We must be responsible for ecological, for social standards also in the supply chain, and therefore we have there pointed out a very well-trained platform that we could make sure that these standards, these social standards, these environmental standards, not only are running in our own company, but also for the whole supply chain. I will end with a very broad overview about some running projects in, let's say, the more traditional area of global responsibility called corporate citizenship. For example, we are running a very interesting project of the accident research in China. This means that we are addressing a social problem on the one hand, and on the other hand, this activity is good for our own reputation. This is what I told you, addressing both an activity which is good for our own reputation and which addresses at the same time a serious social problem, and therefore the winners are on both sides. One idea is to bring our experience, to bring our knowledge in accident research in countries like China or India or also in South America. Another very important project, I earlier mentioned it, is a corporate foundation in Brazil, where we trained, where we supported schools, where we were active in bringing healthcare and school educations in the environmental of our locations. And this is also for us an advantage because we need these young, well-trained people. A very important activity for us is, for example, also our HIV prevention program running in countries like South Africa, but also in Brazil. And we have there very directly and concrete results. I will end up with only one picture. I think it's very important for us not only seeing what we are calling the global risks. I told you about economic risks, about geopolitics risks, social risks, environmental risks, and so on. This is the one side. But in my point of view, it's very important, and I think this could be an issue for the discussion, it's very important for us that we see the opportunities of globalizations. We see that development and well-being through an international division of labor and technical progress brings well-being to a greater number of people than ever exist in the history. This brings market opportunities through positive development in the so-called BRIC states, Brazil, Russia, India, China. It becomes, and this is very important also for us when we are really running these processes and projects, and I can tell you something of our experiences when we bring together all our so-called CSR coordinators in the group. This are nearly 50 persons, and then come together there guys from China, from India, from Mexico, from United States, from Italy, from all parts of the world. And this is really a part of education and of interculturalism. And this is very important that we becoming now a company, let's say, with German roots, but with really interculturalism values and perspectives. And therefore, all in all, in my opinion, globalization has become more and more a driver of sustainability. And I think this is very important for the coming development. Thank you very much for hearing me.